Preparing for your IQA activity. So what information might you need if you are preparing for your IQA activity? We're going to cover this in four main areas. These four main areas are information collection, communications, admin arrangements, and resources. So what information do you need to collect before you do your IQA activities? Well, as part of your planning, you're going to want information about the learners, who they are, where they are, what qualifications they're doing, how long they've been on a program, how much work they've done, and whether there have been any particular problems or challenges with those learners. You will need to gather this information from your assessors. But you will want information about your assessors too. You'll want to know whether they're qualified, what's on their CV, what their experience is, if they've been having any particular problems, and so on, before you also go ahead and do your activities. You'll want to know what qualifications these learners and assessors are working on, whether they're new qualifications, existing qualifications, have there been any changes to these qualifications. You'll need the qualification information and specification and so on, so you've got that information to hand when you go to see the assessor or do your activity. As we've been discussing in previous films, trainee or new assessors represent higher levels of risks, and therefore knowing whether you have trainee assessors in your team or whether they need your support through IQA is going to be important when putting your planning together. Non-qualified assessors will also need to be countersigned by a qualified assessor to make the decisions valid. You might need to see countersigning arrangements and evidence of countersigning before you can sign anything off to be certificated. You need to then determine what levels of activity you need to do, but this will also be based on the level activity of the particular assessors you are looking after. You may use contract assessors or self-employed assessors who may do small levels of activity. It does mean that you will still need to sample and look at what they're doing, but it may mean that the levels of activity may need to be adjusted. As we have mentioned, we need to know what qualifications the assessors and learners are working in and whether they may be new or changed. Sometimes assessment arrangements can be changed. This may be as a result of a response to a learning need, or it may be as a result of a change within a qualification itself. These changes to assessments may indicate what type of activities you are going to do, or whether you need to do more activity because of an increased level of risk due to that change. And then finally, venues. So you might have different assessors working at different venues in different parts of the country. So you want to make sure that your activities cover all these venues, because it's likely that you'll have different cohorts of learners at these different venues in different parts of the country. So knowing these different venues and where they are will help you with your planning, and also where you need to go to do the actual activities you will be doing as an IQA. So let's just go into these in a little bit more detail. So when you're collecting information about your learners, you might need their names, the course they're on, the qualifications they're doing, their start dates, possibly their end dates, what progress they're making, whether any learners have learning challenges or any special arrangements, and so on. It's important to know this information because having a broad view of what the learners are doing generally and what the assessor is doing for these learners is really, really important. But if there are any learning challenges or special arrangements being made, as the IQA, you may want to go and check those just to make sure that they are working properly and that assessment decisions are still robust as they should be. Now, in terms of assessors and the information you might want to collect about assessors, then you'll need to know who they are, where they're working. You might need to know what qualifications they are working on, what their competencies and qualifications and experiences are. If they're new assessors to you, you may need all that information. You might want to have a look at their CV and so on. You will need to know their performance history. Are they an experienced assessor with a good track record of making sound decisions? Are they an experienced assessor with a track record of making less sound decisions? Are they an inexperienced assessor, and so on? Are they reporting any current challenges? Do they have high workload levels, for example? High workload levels would also represent higher increased risks. Do they have outstanding actions from previous IQA activity? This is also key because if they do have outstanding actions from previous IQA activity, these will need to be checked that they are now being done and that they have been addressed. There will be an audit trail likely from a previous report where these actions have been recorded that will therefore need to be signed off to show that the actions have been completed. External quality assurers tend to check that these things have happened. Now, in terms of communications, you will need to send emails and/or letters advising of forthcoming activity. Awarding organisation external quality assurers will send letters and emails to centres advising them that they will be coming out to the centre to do activity. You, as the internal quality assurer, not only from a perspective of courtesy but also from a point of view of audit trail, should and must send emails and/or letters as appropriate, advising of what activities are coming up and so on. This also means that the assessor is aware of the fact that you're coming, can prepare for the fact that you're coming, and also if there are any problems, then they can't turn around and say they didn't know you were coming or didn't have a chance to prepare or didn't know what it was that you were coming to see. And as an IQA, if you are looking to specifically see, say for example, an observation or a discussion, or you want to see a particular learner or learners, then by giving the assessor prior or plenty of prior notice, they can make sure that that happens and that your activity isn't wasted. So part of your communications, as I've just really alluded to, is collecting learner information from assessors and also collecting information from assessors about what activities learners are doing. That will also help to inform your planning and your sort of gathering of information before you go ahead and do your observation or your sampling of your assessors. Now you may need to communicate with employers and other professionals as part of the process. You may need to go and interview employers to make sure they're happy with the assessor and the learners and what's happening and get feedback on that. And you, as I say, you may speak to other professionals within awarding organisations and so on about what you're doing. So what admin arrangements might you need to make? Well, you'll need to make sure you've got all the paperwork together that you are needing for your activity, and this might include blank sample plans, it might include blank observation records, blank learner interview records, and so on. But you need to make sure you've got all your paperwork. It might also include things like qualification specifications, it might include previous IQA reports on that particular assessor. It might even include the EV or EQA visit report because there are actions in there that you want to communicate across. So a quick check of you've got all the paperwork needed for the activity is really, really important. Now you might want to send ahead some of that paperwork to the assessor to review before you come along. So much in the same way that assessors should be planning and briefing their activities with their learners prior to their assessment, we as IQAs should be planning and briefing assessors about what we're coming to do. So if you are going to do an observation of their practice or you are going to interview their learners, send them the paperwork that you're going to use. Give them an opportunity to see what it is you're coming to look at. Again, it's courteous, but it's also an element of effective planning. Now you might decide that if you're having a long visit and you're seeing different assessors on the day, or you're seeing lots of different learners and different activities, that you might want to write an agenda for the visit. It just makes it clear what you intend to do and when. You might be arriving at the venue at 9 o'clock and you want to do an observation of practice at 9:30, then at 11 o'clock you might want to interview your learners, and after 12 o'clock you might want to sample your portfolios and so on. So having an agenda for the visit and what you want to cover just makes that absolutely clear, and also helps the assessor to arrange those things for you in preparation of your arrival. And as part of that, you might then be able to be clear about what files, evidence, learner portfolios you want the assessor to have available for you to look at, and also what staff and personnel need to be available so that you can talk to them at the times that are best suit for everyone. Again, As with the planning aspect of IQA, these administrative arrangements are really vital so that you have a successful visit and you get all the things that you need done, but also to ensure that you don't waste any visits. Now, resources form part of a lot of the different aspects we've been talking about, whether that's the staff and personnel or the paperwork that you might need. But another aspect to be aware of here is technology. What computers or laptops do you need to take? Do you video aspects of assessment practice? Do you need digital voice recorders to record interviews or record conversations with your assessor? So again, considering what type of technology to take with you and make sure it's with you, ready, and you know how to use it is an important part of that. You might need access to online sort of e-portfolio systems to be able to access sampling of activity, in which case you might need access to Wi-Fi. You might also need information about learner registrations and progress. This may be available via the assessor, or you might be able to get this centrally from a central admin team within your organisation, again depending on the context of the organisation. So that was preparing for your IQA activity.